What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Today we're checking out the JHS Legends of Fuzz 1972 Japan Supreme pedal. This pedal is a replica that is affordable and in a nice modern enclosure with a few upgrades and updates for the kind of modern player, and of the Univox Super Fuzz from 1972, from the 1970s. The Univox Super Fuzz started life actually as a multi-effect. It was in a little box that went on top of an amp, and it was called the Shenai Companion, and it was called like the Psychedelic Companion, and it had like a Univibe, and like I think Shenai also made the first Univibe, if I'm not mistaken, and it had like an auto wah and some other wackadoodle stuff. But they had this fuzz circuit in there that was an octave fuzz circuit. It was really crazy sounding. And eventually, though, Shenai, or they were also called Honey, they went bankrupt, and this other company called Univox took over, or the parent company of Univox, I'm not really sure. And either way, Univox got a hold of the circuit, and they started making this pedal that at first started out, it was in this black kind of anodized enclosure, not anodized, black textured metal enclosure, and it had just the button on the top, and then the knobs were like recessed on the side of the pedal. And there was also a tone switch. So it took that circuit, put it into a standalone pedal. And then and this was called I believe it was called like the crying baby effect, because it's a very kind of it's a sound that's kind of you can't miss it. It's pretty it's pretty there, you know. It's hard to avoid. And yeah, eventually Univox rebranded it as the Super Fuzz, and it got put in this just insane enclosure that was orange and blue predominantly, and so it had this big blue rubber foot pedal on the top to turn on and off the effect, and it was in the rest of the pedal was in an orange enclosure. And this is the most common color. I think there was also a super rare black and gray one, and then a gray and black one that was less rare, and then there was like I want to say a purple color or something like that. Maybe it was a green one, I'm not sure. Either way, the orange one was most common, and this one was actually used by a whole bunch of people. Straight off Wikipedia, Paul McCartney used it, apparently. Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys, Billy Corgan, Billy Cox, who played bass with Jimi Hendrix, used it. Chris Walla, Death Cab for Cutie. The first guitarist of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Heil Slovak, used it. Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr., Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age used it. Kurt Cobain used it. Peter Townsend from The Who. Pete Townsend from The Who used it. Steve Hackett from Genesis, one of my favorite players, he used it as well. And so anyway, it's just really cool fuzz that's either really mid-forward and it has an octave up and an octave down, or it's super mid-scooped. And so the original one had a slider or a switch on the side that changed the voice of the pedal. So you push, on this version, it's just a simple little red switch, and you push it in to engage the mid-scoop, or you push it out to engage the mid-boost. So you kind of have two different things going on. It's a very crazy sounding fuzz pedal, and it uses two germanium diodes to produce a very square wave clipping, according to Wikipedia. And yeah, so anyway, JHS, Joshua Heath Scott has been making pedals since 2009, and they're famous for pedals such as the Morning Glory. They made a clone for a long time until the KTR came out. The Morning Glory is the most famous one. I think the Panther and Panther Cub were kind of renowned by a lot of people. They did a Univibe that was replica that was pretty cool for a while. They've done more modern classics like the Bonsai, the Muffaletta, and the Pack Rat, which are pretty cool pedals. Angry Charlie, Charlie Brown. I'm trying to think of the other famous. The Kilt is pretty good, and also the Moonshine and their various Tube Screamer replicas. So yeah, they're pretty well known, and also known for the JHS show on YouTube, which is a great source of entertainment. If you don't watch that, then you should. But anyway, in 2020, they released this series of pedals called the Legends of Fuzz, and basically what they did was they took a bunch of classic circuits of pedals that are rare, fuzz pedals that are rare and unreliable, and packaged them into modern enclosures that still have some vintage flair and indeed some vintage size. As you know, this is a pretty large pedal next to my head, and I don't have a big head either. I have a pretty small head, but this is a Electro Harmonix Ram's Head Big Muff in their nano enclosure, like the Soul Food size, and then this is the Supreme right next to it, and you can see that there's a pretty big difference in the size. Yeah, and the Supreme's a bit thicker as well, but it's very much quite a bit longer, and wider. So it's a big boy. At least the jacks are top mounted though, right? So the enclosure kind of reminds me of the old Octavia Fuzz, Octave Fuzz that Jimi Hendrix would have used. And the Legends of Fuzz originally had four pedals in it. They had a fuzz face replica called the Smiley. They had a Mark III tone bender replica called the Bender. They had a Mike Matthews Red Army Overdrive Big Muff. So this was the first Russian Big Muff, very rare. So from 1992 replica of that, and then the 1972 Univox Super Fuzz replica called the Supreme. And so yeah, the Supreme has one new control over the original ones, and that's the addition of the JHS mode, which is featured on all of the other Legends of Fuzz. They also have the JHS mode, so it just says mode, and you push it in, and it shifts the mid slightly, and supposedly brings out the upper octave. I've found the JHS mode to be okay. I don't really find it to be terribly useful. I think what it would have been perhaps more useful is maybe like a control for where the scoop or how much the scoop is when you engage the tone control. That would have been nice, but you know, I can't complain for the price point that these pedals are at, which is really not too bad. I think that these pedals are pretty great. They're slightly more affordable than the JHS pedals, standard ones. They come in these really cool bent steel enclosures, just like an old Big Muff or an old fuzz pedal would come in. And it's a really cool looking enclosure, and they all have this cool black look. They have the bent steel enclosures with the little, panels on here that have the little aluminum panels that are printed, and we have the little panels even on the side. Like they could have just left this as blank, could have just not said anything and had little buttons, but they actually put the little panel on here with adhesive, which is pretty cool. So I really love the attention to detail and the look of these pedals. It's really phenomenal. The other modern updates are things like true bypass switching, which old fuzz pedals did not have. A lot of them were buffered. We have a status LED here as well. We also have 9-volt DC input for pedal board users. They can rejoice. The controls are really simple. You just have volume and expand. So volume is going to be your output volume, and then expand is going to be your kind of gain control. So you can kind of turn it up or down. I personally don't like to run it lower than noon. I like to just crank it up and just get angry with it. Volume, I like to give a little bit of boost. There's enough output volume on tap, enough to get a slight boost. It depends on the guitar you're using. If you're using a Strat, this is going to have tons of output volume. If you're using, higher output humbuckers, it might struggle a little bit to get back to unity. But you can I think you can still get a slight boost with all of my guitars. It's still louder than the guitar is. And then we have really great output jacks here, which are screwed to the enclosure. The controls on the side, there's two buttons. You can press them in or press them again, and they pop out. So you can push them in like that, or you can push them again and they pop out. It's kind of hard to see. I'll try to zoom in post. And then there's true bypass foot switch, right? The JHS mode shifts the mid-range. It's supposed to bring out the upper octave a little bit. And then there's the tone switch. This is like the tone switch that would have been on the original. Tone. And it's very, very insane. It goes from, makes the pedal like, if when the tone switch is out, it's really mid forward and kind of gnarly AM radio sounding, and then you push it in and it's just insanely scooped and has tons of bass and tons of top end, and it's really crazy. I found this pedal to be awesome for leads, for cool riffs. It's very gated, so it doesn't have a lot of sustain. It's very, it lends itself to staccato playing very much. It doesn't sound like a Jimi Hendrix Octavia, so don't expect it to. If you roll off the volume, it doesn't really make the upper octave pop out the same way. It's doing a similar thing in terms of getting the upper, in terms of the way it gets the upper octave, but it's not really, it doesn't really sound like the Octavia, even though the enclosure kind of looks like it. So if you're hoping for an Octavia, this is not the Octavia, just as a heads up. But it's something different, and it's something really fun. If you like the Black Keys, if you like the Who, if you like, all of those, Smashing Pumpkins, if you like Queens of the Stone Age, all of these guys, they love the Super Fuzz. It's a really cool pedal. overall, I'd give this pedal a 9 out of 10. I think there's a lot of really good things. I think the main thing holding it back is the practicality side of stuff. It's a really large pedal. The knobs are mounted up here with the jacks, so they're hard to read. You don't really know where they are. I kind of can just look at the set screws on there and go, oh, they're turned all the way up. But then again, I don't really need to see the knobs on this. I have like 2 settings. It's like expand all the way up, volume all the way up, or turn the volume down, or turn the expand down a little bit. And then the red switches I can see from the top anyway. I can see if they're pushed in or not. So I'm not really concerned with that thing. I think the main practicality concern I have is just the size. I wish it was just smaller. I wish they had taken this whole thing and just shrunk it by like 30% or 50% even. If it was just smaller but still looked the same, I think that would be really cool. Now, that would have been very difficult with the 3 knob pedals, which it'd be hard to fit 3 knobs up here. It's kind of a price you pay. So I think it's kind of part of the charm and a downside of it. So in terms of appearance, I give these 10 out of 10. They're really cool looking. They're just really awesome. The unboxing experience or the packaging, I think, it's like a 9 out of 10. I'd say, it comes with some cool stuff. JHS gives you the pick. They give you the catalog, all that cool stuff. It's really great. In terms of tone quality, I give it 9 out of 10. It's a disgusting sound, but it's a really cool fuzz sound, and it's a classic. I don't think that you can argue with that. I haven't compared it to a real super fuzz, but I'm probably not going to be able to until I make big bucks. And even then, I don't know if I'm going to spend money on buying an old super fuzz just to compare it to this one. This thing sounds good enough for me. All right, I didn't like what I had to say when I recorded the video for this, so I'm overdubbing it here. Basically, I think in terms of tonal flexibility, I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. I think that there are quite a few different sounds within this pedal, and yes, it does what the Super Fuzz does, which is somewhat flexible, but all of them are gated, all of them are kind of gross sounding, so that's really all you're going to get out of this pedal. But the JHS mode adds some more flexibility, and there's a great range on the gain control and the volume control, and with the 4 buttons. So I think 6 out of 10 is a fair score. I think in terms of practicality, I'm just going to lump all the practicality into one. I think that this pedal gets a solid 6 out of 10. It gets good marks for having a battery compartment that's easy to access, having an LED, having a 9-volt jack, having modern switching that doesn't suck the tone. And I like the jacks being on the top, but I don't like the large size. That's the main thing that I don't like about it, and it's hard to read the knobs. So yeah, I think this pedal is really awesome. I think you should try it out. It sounds great. Humbuckers, single coils. It doesn't mind being after a buffer, which is always really great. And because it's kind of gated sounding, it doesn't add a bunch of hiss or noise like the Big Muff does. The big muffs add a ton of noise when they're on, but this thing gates itself, so it's really great. It just kind of gates the noise, and you don't have to hear a bunch of hissing. All right, let me know what you think in the comments of the JHS Supreme. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Have you tried the Behringer one? What would you rate this pedal? Have you tried the other Legends of Fuzz? Which ones do you want to try? Which one should I try next? Drop a comment which pedal I should review next. What did you think of the teardown of the showing the insides? Do you think I'm being fair or unfair to this pedal? Let me know. Leave your hot takes, your strong opinions in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to them. You've been wonderful. I've been Zach. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.